Hey everyone, welcome to the Conf42 Prompt Engineering 2024 conference. I'm going to be talking about the topic AI in product management and how the different AI tools and all the AI changes are going to be impacting the product management process. My name is Sabarinath, Viji, and I'm a product management professional. I work as part of the leadership team at Dairy.dev, and I've worked across different geographies across several hypergrowth startups. Now, as a product manager, there are so many things that you tend to do typically in your job, and there are just so many hats to wear. Think about the day when you had very limited time and probably you're going to be launching some important product, but at the same time, you had to sift through so much of user feedback that was required for some of the project. Think about the scenario where you had so less time, but you had to wait for your analyst to come back with some insights by processing a lot of data. These are some scenarios which happens in the day-to-day life of any product manager. So what I'm going to be discussing is how using AI, we can actually build a very efficient product management, and that would actually give you ample amount of time, save you a lot of time, which you can then utilize for your thought leadership or any of the other more interesting aspects of product management. I want to start with a bold claim by saying that product management is dead. Or is it? When I say product management is dead, what I mean is 3 years down the line or 5 years down the line, product management is going to look very different from what it is today. We are already entering what I call the age of the product alchemist. What is a product alchemist, or who's a product alchemist, and how is the product management role going to change? There are so many exciting changes that are coming the way of product management. So that's what we'll dive into. So before we get into the nitty-gritties, we need to understand what product management looks like today. So today there is typically an UX team or a design team, then there's an engineering team, there's also the business team, and product management, the product management leader or the product manager tends to orchestrate things between these different teams. They also set the product vision, goals, try to talk to users, and so on. So these are the different responsibilities of a product manager. So be it setting the strategy and vision at a slightly higher or a senior level, conducting user research, be it through focus group discussions or one-on-one interviews with your customers, or even running surveys and processing that information. So once you have certain initiatives that you decided, the product manager tends to create the specifications in such a manner such that it is clear to engineering on why and what they are working on, and also linking all the necessary designs and making sure there is not a lot of ambiguity. Data analysis is also one major aspect of product management. As a product manager, you need to go through a lot of data on a day-to-day basis, especially in the B2C side, where, sometimes you're very reliant on your product analyst or the data science team and waiting for them to process the data and give you the top insights. Then there's the communication aspect, the software aspect, where you're working towards aligning your stakeholders, sharing what the current status looks like, and what are the roadblocks, etc. There's all kinds of communication you're doing, vertical communication, horizontal communication, and so on. So there's also the wireframing reviews part, the design reviews, typically a part of where you're interacting with the design team, brainstorming and coming up with ideas around what exactly needs to be the concept design, what exactly needs to be the visual design, how the information architecture needs to flow, so on and so forth, right? Then there's also the QA and testing part which comes up when the product is getting shipped. Before that, while there may be a dedicated QA team, as a product manager, you are expected to test all the different flows and so on. In the middle of all this, you're also probably running meetings, sending out updates and so on. You're definitely responsible for the roadmap of whatever charter you're running. And finally, the go-to-market, making sure that the different teams are aware of how exactly the product is going to be launched in different markets. This can completely vary depending on whether it's a B2B context or a B2C context for sure. But however, as a product manager, you need to be involved in that go-to-market, in discussing the launch dates, the launch checklist, and all of these things with the relevant teams. Now, I'm classifying these responsibilities into 3 buckets. One is the ideation bucket, which is typically the time phase when you're thinking and when you're figuring out what exactly needs to be built. And once this is done, you enter the execution phase. And once everything has been decided as part of the execution, that's when you're also parallelly aligning a lot of teams. Some alignment does happen even before the execution starts. that is between the ideation and the execution phase as well. What I've done is I've referenced several resources on the internet and come up with what is the different task category and what is going to be the AI impact level. So, for example, when you think about strategy and vision, it's probably going to be very highly impacted because when you write certain prompts to the AI tools like ChatGPT, they do come up with what kind of product strategy you should follow. Likewise, creating specifications, it is something where you spend a lot of time on making sure that it's all crystal clear, but that's something that AI can completely do for you. While it may not really reach the 100% of the specification, polished document, for sure, it can reach maybe 75% level, and the beyond, the last 25% or the last mile is something you can definitely polish and then send it to engineering. Likewise, in the user research front, you're probably spending several hours together, sifting through a lot of user interviews, drawing out insights. But once you have processed the initial data, if you can feed this to the different GPTs that are available, then they can definitely extract insights for you, and you can take the next actions or try to identify how to convert this into the feature roadmap. Likewise, the roadmap development is also something that ChatGPT can come up with a lot of ideas, but you need to brainstorm with the different teams that are available, like the design team and the engineering teams, to finally fine-tune the final roadmap. Likewise, in execution development, there are several areas where AI is going to be impacting the day-to-day process. The last one is with respect to leading with influence or the stakeholder alignment aspect. This is where there's not going to be a lot of impact. It's mostly a moderate impact, be it in terms of internal communication, convincing people, meeting them and trying to build a case around why you should build a product, so on and so forth. Now, let's talk about what are the structural changes that are going to happen in our digital product management scenario based on all the things that we have just seen. So today there's a product trifecta, right? So where there's an engineer, there's a designer, then there's a product manager, also supported by an analyst, for example. In the future, there's probably going to be a role called the product alchemist, which would entail a single person running multiple of these functions. There's going to be a lot of overlap by leveraging the AI tools that are available in the market. This role is going to be potentially a hands-on role that completely overlaps, as I said, with design. There is one person who's probably generating the wireframes and the mockups for a particular project, and also in parallel writing and preparing the code and launching products. So that's how I visualize the future role of the product alchemist. And this is completely possible, while it might be difficult to imagine today. A world of 3 to 5 years down the line is going to look completely different. So there's also going to be a flattening of the GPM role, and there's going to be the growing significance of the senior IC or the individual contributor. So if you see, this is how the product org chart looks like today. There's a VP at the helm, and then there are some product directors reporting into them. And each product director also has some senior or BPMs to whom some junior PMs report into. But how I visualize this structure to change is that it will become much leaner. So for example, here you can see that there are close to 12 people product org, but that's going to flatten because the AI tool is going to do a bunch of work, which frees up time, which means you need fewer people to give the same amount of output or the outcome. And that would be, I would claim that's going to be at least 40 to 50% reduction in the typical team size, or there will be leaner and more efficient teams. So in the next slides, we will look at how you can actually leverage all these AI tools and become a more efficient PM, or even a PM leader for that matter, and actually drive a lot of significant outcome. That is this wonderful quote I came across online, where Abel Joseph, a founder of a startup which got acquired very recently. So this person says world-class software can actually be built with less than 4 engineers, and AI is going to further drive the efficiency. So in the next section, we'll talk about some of the prompt engineering techniques that are available. While we can go and ask ChatGPT certain queries, as we think about it, it may not fetch the best results, which is why using some of these prompt engineering techniques would help in structuring the prompt, and it will make sure that the GPT also understands the exact type of output that you're expecting, and the search results that you get would be more relevant. So the ones of common prompting techniques are One is you can assign a personality to a GPT. So for example, if let's say you are a film writer who's trying to write a script, but you want the script like as probably like Christopher Nolan would narrate it, then you can just imagine you are Christopher Nolan and then try to help me with how you would come up with a storyline or something like that. Then there's the zero shot prompting. Then there's a few shot prompting where you would give the GPT some examples. Meta prompting where you can mention a series of certain rules or specifications based on which you want ChatGPT to think about a particular problem and then come up with the results. Then there's the chain of thought prompting where you give step-by-step instruction to the GPT and try to walk the GPT through how you are thinking about a particular problem. We look at some of the examples quickly. So this is an example of a few shot prompting. So let's say you are trying to create content for a client or maybe even for a product that you're trying to launch. Then you can give the GPT some examples. So with an example, and you'll say what's the brief and what's the content. Likewise, you feed it a couple more examples. And then you prompt the GPT to come up with something for the latest brief. And then you would see that GPT is able to emulate the tone, the type of structuring, etc., which is quite useful, which will also like help you in sticking to your brand guidelines and such rules that you're expecting. Then there's the chain of thought prompting. We have two examples here. For example, in the first input, you are saying that the browser has 5 tennis balls, he buys 2 more cans, and that's a query, right? And you give what's the answer as well. And then you are trying to give another question, but the output comes to be wrong, where you say, okay, there are 23 apples, they used like 20 to make lunch and bought 6 more. How many apples do they have? It should ideally be like 23 minus 20 plus 6, which is 9, but the model comes up with something like 27. The same thing, how you would prompt it using a chain of thought prompting is that you go with the step-by-step answers. For example, in the answer, you're mentioning Roger started with 5 balls, 2 cans of 3 tennis balls, each is 6 tennis balls. Therefore, it is 5 plus 2 into 3, which is 5 plus 6, which is 11. Now, when you feed a similar question, the model comes up with the correct answer. So this is the power of using prompting techniques. In the next part, let's quickly do a couple of case studies and see what kind of results we are getting. We'll go for the market research that you need to pursue for building an app. I actually have quite a few samples here for a market research. What exactly we are expecting the GPT to do here is it needs to gather some publicly available data, develop a few buyer personas, identify competitors, and get some suggestions on how to fill existing market gaps. Let's take any example. Let's say we'll tell the GPT to assume it is a market researcher, could use a researcher. And for the app building example, let's say we are trying to build something in the sports market, and let's see what kind of results we are getting. This is just an example, an arbitrary example. Trying to build a product, sports management, publicly available data. So as a product manager, you need to be familiar with certain terms like TAM, SAM, so on, etc., so that you can give this feedback to the GPT. So you get appropriate results. So in this case, I will say, try to come up with the TAM. Great. It's already given us an overview of like how the bucket has been growing, like what the user segments are. For example, it says like amateur sports clubs and associations, educational institutions, so on and so forth. And it's also estimating the market size. Great. This is amazing. So next, what we'll do is let's look at, so it does give a very preliminary analysis of the market research. Of course, we need to vet the data points and see whether it's working or not and talk to users, etc. Let's ask it to come out with some features for one of the user segments. Okay, let's take amateur sport clubs and associations. Choose this user segment. Come up with the primary goal is to streamline their administrative tasks, enhance communication numbers, and improve the overall management. That's great. It says we can come up with member management, event and schedule management, communication notifications, managing rosters, so on and so forth. Let's see what else it's coming up with. Great, it's very comprehensive and definitely very useful as a starting point. In the interest of time, what I would do is I'd also feed it another input, which is to try to prioritize some of these features. Can you help me prioritize use ICE, or ICE is usually like impact, confidence, effort framework. So product manager, you would be familiar with this term, and hence you just need to give this input. Or, of course, after I could have framework. Great. It's already assigning values, but this is where, as a product manager, you will still have a lot of work to do, which is you need to actually talk to the users and try to understand what is the potential impact from a user perception perspective as well as from a business perspective, and then try to come up with a ice code. But as you can see, you can actually, once you gather that information, you can input that to the GPT and it's going to come up with a very polished structure, which you can then use for prioritization. This is great. So I think we should just switch to the next case study, which is around like a quick data analysis. But this should give you a good gist of like how across the product lifecycle, you tend to have multiple ways in which you can make the product management process way more efficient using GPT by giving it appropriate prompts and using different prompting techniques. In this section of the presentation, we would look at how we can use ChatGPT to process the data points related to churn and the retention of the customers, and see what type of insights can we draw and how we can extend that to certain product features. But before we go into the actual data processing, I would like to just touch upon why the retention information is very important as a product manager. As a product manager, you're measuring a lot of metrics, right? And retention metrics is one of the key metrics that you want to measure for any of the products that you're launching. The reason being, retention is a measure of the product market fit of any product, and hence you need to keep a close eye on it. Now, a better retention typically indicates a better product market fit. For most products, there are some exceptions though. Now let's look at some sample data. This is publicly available. It's a publicly available data set of a fictitious finance company, and see how we can use ChatGPT to process information, draw insights. So here we can see the customer ID, the credit score, some demographic data, then the balance of the user, how long they have been using the product, and whether or not they have a credit card, whether they are an active member, what's their estimated salary, and so on and so forth. Now let's ask GPT to help us with processing the information. Okay. Draw insights, customer churn data by pausing it and checking for correlations between different user parameters. It clearly mentions the approach, and it says like we need data preparation, which is typically the data collection, and also exploratory data analysis is the fundamental slicing and rising of data in order to give us baseline upon which we can further build insights. So there's also a feature correlation with churn, which it suggests may not be applicable in this particular case. And analyzing trends, that's definitely possible in our case. And an optional machine learning models. We wouldn't go into that in this particular example, but let's quickly try to upload this information and see what ChatGPT can help us with. So this is that file. Okay, it is analyzing. That's nice. I really like the way it has categorized information into demographic, financial, and account information. That's what an analyst would start with, right? So by doing a quick slice and dice of what the situation of the data is. Oh wow, it's also given us a correlation matrix where it's drawing the correlation coefficient between each of the factors. It's again a preliminary analysis. And it says that there are some direct correlations with churn, how the satisfaction score appears to have a negative correlation with exited, and also whether that's a correlation with balance as well. Okay, it says the correlation is low. That's okay. So that's also something related to credit score. Yes, let's get some visualizations. So draw more insights by categorizing into segments. It does a geography, gender, and card type, but I'm not sure like why it is not taken up. Let's say something like a salary or age, which were present there. But yeah, let's give that as an input just after it finishes analyzing this part. Oh, it's here. It's the 10-year balance and satisfaction score. No problem. Can you run an analysis? Also by including age, salary, points, and see how these correlate to. Interesting. I love the way it gets the fundamental blocks right. Let's see if we are able to get some insights here. Clearly, it's also showing a little bit about like how the senior folks, they seem to be at a slightly higher churn rate compared to the young ones. There doesn't seem to be a lot of difference in the churn rate based on the salary segment or the point segment. So I think this is good. Now let's think about this a little bit, why this analysis is important. So in a typical product management setting, as a product manager, you would need to raise this analysis request with the analytics team, and depending on their bandwidth, they may already have some backlog items, which means this analysis might have taken maybe between a few days to maybe even a week or two, depending on the size of the org and the priorities. When you leverage GPT, you can typically do this preliminary analysis yourself, and you can actually request your analytics team just to build on top of this. So that's humongous time saving that you can gain by prompting a GPT with the specific ones. So you just need to know that you need to run the retention analysis and see like how you can, what are the factors based on which you need to segment, and what are the different parameters that might correlate. So for example, in this case, it didn't call out the age in the beginning, but then like I did prompt it with the age, and then we were able to draw some insights. Now let's just do one last bit, which is to see if we can ask ChatGPT to suggest like what kind of features we need to build to address this churn. Great, it has given us a series of potential features that we can build, which is quite interesting and nice. Yeah, this is great. So this is a good input and we can further enhance it, but let's move on to the next part of the presentation. This is just a very quick example. So I hope the micro case studies that we mentioned are were quite helpful. And if in case you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I won't conclude by saying that there's just so much excitement around AI, obviously. And there's just so many use cases using which we can leverage AI in product management and make our process way more efficient, build leaner teams, and be able to deliver much better impact. Thanks for listening.